She sat at a table for one. The restaurant was buzzing. Laughter, clinking glasses, couples leaning close. Yet she sat alone, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. And then a shadow leaned in. A voice, low and commanding, brushed against her ear. "Tonight, you're my wife." Not a pickup line, not a joke, but a statement that would shatter her quiet life and drag her into a world she never thought she'd touch. That night, one decision, one whispered sentence, would blur the line between survival and surrender. She wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this part of the city, not in this restaurant, not under this chandelier where power dined in silk and secrets. She had chosen the table by the wall, facing the door. Habit. Growing up cautious had taught her to never sit with her back exposed. The waiter had asked politely, "Will someone be joining you?" She smiled. "No, just me." That answer always came with a sting, didn't it? People pretend not to notice, but a table for one always draws eyes. Some pity, some judgment, some curiosity, and that's when it happened. A hush around her. A ripple in the air like the way a room shifts when a storm presses against the windows. She didn't look up at first, she only felt it. The pause. The silence after footsteps that carried more weight than sound. Then the chair beside her scraped back. Not across from her. Beside her. Too close. A man in a dark tailored suit leaned in. His cologne smelled expensive, sharp, and dangerous. His hand didn't touch her, but the space between them evaporated. And then the whisper, "Tonight, you're my wife." Her first instinct was laughter, but the words froze in her throat. Because when she turned, she saw his face. Everyone knew that face. The newspapers never used his real name. They called him the Ghost of Palermo. Others called him the Boss. But here, in this city, he was the shadow at the edge of every deal. The man whose name carried weight like a loaded gun on the table. And now he was at hers. "What?" she whispered. But he was already straightening, nodding toward the waiter like it was the most ordinary request. "Wine for my wife." The waiter hesitated. Everyone hesitated around him, and then nodded. That was the inciting moment, the shift, because suddenly she wasn't invisible anymore. Every eye in the restaurant was on her. Not as the girl eating alone, but as the woman he had just claimed, and with that claim came danger. At first, she thought, maybe this was a mistake. Maybe he'd confused her with someone else. She leaned closer, her voice sharp with a tremor. "I think you've mistaken me for no mistake." His eyes didn't leave hers. They were dark, unreadable, yet oddly calm. "Play along, or you won't leave here." Her heart stuttered. That was the first escalation. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't pretending. This was survival, disguised as romance. She wanted to stand, to run. But the heaviness of the room told her she couldn't. Because if he was here, then so were his men. Watching, guarding, and the people who opposed him. Watching too. Suddenly she realized this wasn't about her. Not really. She was a piece on a board she hadn't known she was standing on. And across the restaurant, she caught it. Eyes at another table. A man, stiff, watching them, his jaw clenched, his hands fisted under the linen cloth. Enemies. She was the shield. Or the message. The waiter poured the wine. She forced herself to lift the glass, her fingers trembling against the stem. He raised his too. For the first time, a small curve tugged at his lips. "To tonight," her voice cracked. To survival, and he noticed. He always noticed. That was the first seed of hope. Minutes stretched like hours. He kept the conversation light on the surface. Casual words about the menu, the wine, the weather. But every pause, every look, carried subtext. "You're not used to being seen, are you?" he asked quietly. "No one looks twice at someone like me." "Exactly why you're perfect." Perfect? The word landed like both a blessing and a curse. And then the turning point came. The man at the other table stood. Slowly. He wasn't leaving. He was approaching. The boss didn't flinch. Instead, he reached across the table, took her hand in his. His grip was firm, possessive, yet steady. A performance, yes, but also protection. "Smile," he murmured. "For him. For me." The stranger's shadow loomed over them, his voice taut with rage. "She's not yours," her breath caught. She didn't even know either of them. Yet somehow she was caught between fire and ice. The boss looked up, unhurried, his thumb brushing her knuckles like a silent warning. "She is tonight. Do you want to test that?" The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. The stranger froze, then slowly stepped back, swallowing whatever storm had brought him here. And just like that, power shifted. She was no longer invisible. She was claimed. When the other man left, her hand stayed in his. Too long, too charged. She wanted to pull away, but something in his eyes kept her frozen. "Why me?" she whispered. He leaned closer, his voice almost soft now. "Because sometimes the safest disguise is the truth no one believes. No one would think I'd choose you." It stung, but there was also safety in it. A strange, twisted shield. She realized then, she was part of something bigger than a meal. She was part of a game, and in games like this, survival wasn't about winning. It was about not being the piece sacrificed. The night unraveled like a story she hadn't agreed to be in. Every laugh he faked, every smile she mirrored, every toast they raised, it was theater. And yet, beneath the act, something else brewed. There were moments, small ones, when his hand steadied hers as she reached for a fork, when he guided her through a crowded hallway like she mattered, when his eyes, just for a second, softened, like he wasn't the boss, but a man carrying a burden no one else could see. And that's where the transformation began, because she wasn't just afraid anymore. She was curious. She saw the cracks, the humanity he hid beneath iron and shadow, and maybe he saw something in her too. Something he didn't expect. When the night ended, he escorted her out. The street was cool, quiet, the hum of city lights surrounding them. His car waited, black and gleaming, a fortress on wheels. He paused before opening the door for her. "Thank you," he said simply. For what? For surviving. It was the smallest phrase, but it carried weight, respect, a recognition that she hadn't crumbled, hadn't run. She had played her role, and in doing so, maybe saved both of them. And then, before she could answer, he pressed something into her hand. A ring, heavy, ornate, cold against her palm. "A reminder," he murmured, "that tonight you were mine. And tomorrow, maybe still," her breath caught. Because this wasn't just theater anymore. It was a seed of danger, of possibility, of change. And as his car door shut and the taillights disappeared into the night, she stood alone again. A table for one, replaced by a night for two. But nothing would ever be the same. Stories like this make us wonder about the masks people wear and the unexpected roles we're forced to play. Sometimes survival means stepping into a part you never auditioned for, and sometimes that part changes you forever. If this story gripped you, take a second to think. In your own life, what role have you been forced into that you never expected? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if you want more cinematic tales like this one, stories that blur the line between fear, hope, and transformation, make sure to subscribe. Because the next story might just start with another whisper,